Hi, welcome to Bad Music Taste and Other Ways to Ruin Your Life. My name is Dominic.
And my name is Sam. Dominic has a record this week.
This week's record is The Singles by Bikini Kill. This record was first released in 1998 on Bikini Kill Records, and the copy I have here is a repress on black vinyl. Anyways, today we're talking to Greg Antonito of the Bouncing Souls. How's it going, Greg?
Good. It's good to meet you guys, and nice to be here.
Thank you for doing it. You've been selling your art for a few years now. So how did you first get into doing art and painting?
Well, I think I started as a kid, just doing it like anyone does, and when I was in art class, I kind of like clicked with it. It was something that I liked and was good at, but maybe I didn't pursue it seriously. I just played with drawing and had drawing pads and notebooks and journals and stuff through high school, and then I got into music and just focused so much on that I would sometimes paint occasionally, but barely at all for a while. I toured for like 9 or 10 months out of the year and kind of like didn't do it for years, and then got into it sort of as a creative person to sort of as a therapy kind of thing, just to free my mind a little bit and be creative without any parameters. Because as the Bouncing Souls became like a band that sort of like a business as well, it is a good creative outlet, but it had parameters. So with my art, I was like the king of my own little kingdom. When you're in your little creative space, you're the boss of everything. I'm going to do blue here, I'm going to do red there, and nobody's going to say a thing about it, So that's a great thing to have. I think it's important for everyone actually to have some sort of something like that it's their own little world that you can sort of express yourself freely without having any restrictions. So as far as like selling my art, that came later when social media came around, and it was like I started doing these drawings on tour for fun again, to like sort of like on tour. There's a lot of like hurry up and waiting. Like you're like, we got to get on, we got to catch the plane, then we got to get on the bus, and then we're going to drive here, and then we're going to wait for sound check for 3 hours, and then we're going to sound check, and then we're going to wait 5 hours for set time. So it's a little bit maddening. So I found doing something like that in those waiting times where you really can't do anything, like you're not at home, you can't even like get up and go make a sandwich or something, you're just like sort of stuck. And so I said, all right, I'll start doing some drawings from the cities that we're in. I would go for a walk and sort of like draw the skyline or something, and I started posting them, and people were like, this is amazing, is this for sale? And I was like, yeah, I guess, okay, yeah. So that's how it started as far as selling it. And then again, it's the same sort of thing. I sort of like parlayed it, and I was like, this is fun because I can kind of do as much of this as I want or not, like I can do some artwork, or some people are interested in specific pieces now, and I can be like, yeah, that makes sense. I can maybe paint your dog. I'll try that, and or something like that, and stuff that I never would normally do. So it's fun for me again. And it's I've made a little bit of money on the side from it, which is nice too. So that's the long story.
Yeah, right over on my wall, I have the Haunt painting.
Oh, cool.
I got that for Christmas in like 2018.
Very cool. That's a super cool, very cool venue in the UK.
Yeah, I've never been there, obviously. But
yeah. In a cool city too. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the Bouncing Souls like one of the last shows I ever saw was the Bouncing Souls in Philly, and then later that day it was the Misfits.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Where did we play that night? Can you remind me? In Philly? What
was the TLA.
That's it. Yeah, that was a really fun night. So you went to the Misfits show too?
Yeah, that was weird because I was like right up at the very top of the venue, and then there was some dude in like a sweater vest and like a he had like a badge and he was like, "Hey, we're giving out free tickets to sit down there. You interested?" And we were like, "Okay, we'll miss Agnostic Front set, like walking down there." Like
Yeah.
we didn't think it was real, but then the security people were like, "Yeah, this like it was a real ticket to sit like right next to the stage and watch the Misfits play."
Sweet. Yeah, that was a great day. We had like a fun gig, and then we're like, now we get to go see the Misfits. This is great.
And it was weird because like we also ran into Dave Haas later that day. Like he was sitting at the table next to us while we were like eating dinner that night. And we were like, this day was too good. And then there was a pandemic and we didn't see a show for another year.
Yeah, no one expected that, right? Yes.
So
Yeah.
you had an Instagram called Chasing the Latte. However, you haven't posted in a while. So have you indeed found the perfect latte?
That's a fun question. Yeah, I started it at this window of time after I had my son, and we were my wife's family's from in Victoria in BC, so we were up there spending like 6 months up there, and we were just in like complete like baby world. Like I was just like my wife was essentially staying at the house taking care of the baby, and I was like the guy that would run out to the market. And then we were in downtown Victoria, so I started like, I'm like, oh cool, I'm gonna try that coffee shop on the way back. You know, it's different than the one over around the corner. There was a lot of coffee shops, so I was like, and I would come back and I would get like something for Shanti, and we kind of sit, and then I found I would be like reviewing the lattes. I'd be like, so this one's pretty good, but I think the one I got yesterday was better. Maybe I'll go there, you know. And then I started doing that, and then I ended up again, you know, in that world where we were literally just sort of quarantined because we were just in baby infant world. Like we were just taking care of that baby and snuggling him, and then you know she's feeding him, and then we're up half the night, up and down for like a couple months. So like that was the perfect time for me to be like, I had my little excursion. I came back, and then I would be like, I want to write a little review about my latte. And I stopped posting because I essentially kind of stopped doing it. Like it ended, and then I was like, also, I was like, I realized like I didn't want to manage more than one Instagram account. Like I don't even like holding my phone that much to be like, I guess I'm not gonna do this anymore. That was part of it too. But
Yeah,
it's fun. I actually like it. Like I would do it some more, but I'm not motivated enough to like hold my phone and write another post on another Instagram account. Yeah.
yeah. Whenever we're like, oh yeah, we drink coffee, people are always like, no, you don't. You're kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Because
yeah,
it's
maybe you
like,
guys should take over the idea. If you're out and about, you're like, you know what, I'm gonna steal my idea if you want. If you guys like coffee, I'm cool with that.
yeah, the closest place is like Starbucks, so you can't make a whole Instagram off of
Yeah, we don't have a lot of
Starbucks.
variety where we are.
Right. You got to be real creative with that. You're like, you got to be like, okay, well, I saw a guy wearing this, and then this other lady was in there, and then it was like, okay,
Like the lady in front of me got a pink drink.
there you go. You're telling a story.
So yeah, throughout the pandemic, the Bouncing Souls have been still recording and releasing music. So what does the recording process look like from separate houses for you guys?
Good question. We ended up luckily releasing a record that we finished as the quarantine was happening, which was like kind of intense, as it all was in various ways for everyone. We were outside Philadelphia recording with Will Yip. We recorded for 2 weeks with a break in the middle. So this is just the arc of it. It was like probably the end of February 2020 we started. That first week we were like, what's going on in the news? Like Italy's got some kind of pandemic? What happens? What's going on? Like, oh, well, let's just keep rocking. You know, we're working, we're recording. Like that was the vibe around that time. Then we took a couple days off and my wife and my son were staying in Jersey at my dad's. We all were like, that was when it started getting serious. And it was like, all of a sudden it shifted around that time. Like it was like almost over a weekend. And then we had one more week to record. So we came back to the studio and everyone's just like, what is going on? This is for real, man. Everyone's kind of like trying to figure it out and like, you know, read, you know, between the lines on the news, you know, we're all like, what's really going on here, you know? And by the end of that week, they had closed the restaurant upstairs. We had one day left. Like I went to take my wife and my son to the park, and it was like real apocalyptic. Like I'm like, there's a park, you guys can play here for a minute before we're done. So last day. And they were like caution taping the park and there's cops and trucks out there. And I'm like, we get out of here, you know? So we like ran back and like that was happening, which now it's not that crazy, but back then it was just like, what the hell, you know? So we were so sort of lucky because we finished that tracking, spent another 2 days at my dad's, and then just got out flew out. I live in Idaho now, and flew back to Idaho. And the day after that, they closed the airport, the New York City airports. They closed Newark Airport, which they did reopen in like a couple weeks, but it was very nice to get home and not stay at my dad's for 2 weeks during that time. So also, when I got to Boise, I was like, the guy with like the tin foil hat, like, you guys don't know what's coming. You know, it was like completely normal in Boise. Like I got off the plane and it was just, everyone's just like, yeah, whatever. And like, I felt like I was like bringing the pandemic to Idaho. And I was just like, oh, this is weird. Cause we had no idea at that point, like, and you know, even Philly was a hot spot. Like overnight, it sort of was like all this news was coming up. Like we were in a hot spot. Everyone's buying toilet paper like maniacs. You guys know what happened. So that was the story. So to answer your question, we did release a record which we recorded normal style, and it came out in October of 2020. But when quarantine started, and we were all just like, what do we do now? We were a band. Are we a band? We can't play music live. What do we do? We started the Patreon page, which was also a comedy routine. You know, the discussion about like four old punkers like starting a Patreon page it was also a comedy in itself. Like the idea of like us being like, what? Patreon? We would never do that. Who does that? We don't do that. We're a punk band, you know, like, but you know, you throw a pandemic at us and all of a sudden we're going to be like, maybe that's not a bad idea. What else are we going to do? So we start the Patreon, and one of the tiers is we have 10 people who get a song written for themselves. So essentially one of the tiers is we have like a 20-minute, half-hour Zoom meeting, and then we kind of chat, and then we write a song, and you get a one-off 7-inch vinyl with your song on it.
Oh, wow.
We started doing that. Yes. And we were all, and believe me, like all of us were like, is this a good idea? Like, is this going to get bad? You know, like, we don't know. You know, we just like, we were all in quarantine. We're like, we should do something. Again, something we never, ever would have even thought about doing. We would have been like, someone would have suggested that to us in 2019. We'd be like, nope, not doing that. You know, so yes, we started this process. The first person that did it, it came out great. This guy from Vermont, we had a really fun conversation with him. He ended up referencing Frank Turner. Do you guys know Frank Turner? He's a singer-songwriter from England.
Yeah.
He was talking about watching Frank Turner's live stream. So that was all part of the conversation. So to make a long story short, we kind of wrote that into the song, and then we reached out to Frank, who is our friend, and we're like, dude, we're doing this Patreon thing. this guy was, we referencing you in the song, and he's like, oh, great. And, when we sing backups, so he sings backups in it. So he got this special little extra thing in his song, like Frank Turner's on the song. So that's kind of fun. And it's been a total adventure. So we had to figure out our technical process, because essentially Brian and Pete get together, they make some music, send it to me, and then I'm singing on it and trying to sort out some words and verses. After we have the meeting and talk about some of the words as a group, we're talking about the words together, and we kind of land on some ideas, and everyone's like, oh, that's a cool idea. That's a cool idea. I kind of collect those. I take notes, and then they record music and send it to me. So at first it was like, we did really well. That first song went great. And then the second one was a little difficult. And we figured out our process to have a Zoom meeting. So we have a 20-minute, it's a very restricted process. We're making these choices in a short time, where usually we write songs and we like hash over them a million different ways, and you try them in different ways, and you're in a room together and you're like, what about this? What about that? You play it at a show. And you're like, okay, that works or doesn't work. Then you go back to working on it. So we had none of that. We have a 30-minute Zoom meeting after the 30-minute Zoom meeting with the person, where it's me, George, and Pete, and Brian, and we sort of hash out the music and the lyrics, and that's it. They record a rough version, send it to me. I put a vocal. They go back, they overdub. It's like 3 sessions. George does drums, and that's their song. It's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like a really neat idea to have, though. The fact that they get like a vinyl with their song on it.
Yeah, it's pretty special. And for us, like it allows us to make all these quick choices that we never would do. You know what I mean? Like you're restricting yourself, especially like old dogs like us who've been like doing this in so many years, that we're so sort of set in our ways. You need to be forced into something, to do something in a different way, and make those choices, especially if you're an artist or a musician. I'm sure you guys understand, you're your own worst critic. You can just sit there and be like, it's no good, no one will ever see this. You know what I mean? Like you can just do that to yourself all day long. So it's nice to have that as those restrictions sometimes, because you can be like, do you guys like Black Flag or the Descendants?
Absolutely. We just talked to Keith Morris 2 weeks ago.
Well, I have a great quote from Bill Stevenson. He played drums in Black Flag. He played drums in the Descendants, related to this story. He's talking about like when you're writing music or you're making art and you have to make choices. He said, if he didn't have, a limited time, like if you had, a certain amount of studio time, when I was making the Black Flag records, I only had X amount of days. If I had an unlimited amount of time, I'd still be setting up the mic on the kick drum, trying to get the best kick drum sounds like right now, so those things force you to make choices, end up being a good thing, is my point.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like a push factor situation where, like you said, you could pick over every little detail of something, but especially in a situation like that, when you're doing it with another person who's kind of like the second variable that you've never worked with before, I think that's even crazier.
Yeah, it's been great. And again, like we have old habits. It's been nice to break some of those old habits, and a lot of cool stuff has come out of it. I think the people that we wrote the songs for are stoked, and it's also opening up our eyes to a new process.
Yeah, like we started the podcast over the pandemic, and we never would have been like like in 2019 we never would have been like starting a podcast. No.
Right.
Right? I mean, yeah, I think as we all have had to pivot in the pandemic and be like, okay, well, how can we do some positive things? And when we're all restricted, I mean, way restricted, things were forced on us in that way. So great. And it's been going good. The podcast has been going really good.
Yeah, we just got to a year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like Dominic just said, we never thought we would do it, but just seeing like what we've done in the year of time and like what we've accomplished has been pretty great. It's a really fun thing to do.
You can't beat that self-satisfaction, right? When you guys are like, well, you think back to when it's just an idea. You're like, I don't know, should we do that? And now look how far you've come. That's a great thing.
Yeah, and like starting it, like first starting it, we just talked to our friends. The first few episodes we were like talking to
Cool.
our friends, and then we reached out to J.R. Wazalewski of Less Than Jake, and Less Than Jake is one of my favorite bands. And
Yeah.
that was the first like actual interview. And that was like we scheduled that one at like a month out because we didn't know like because for the first like 5 interviews we asked the same questions. Like it was like top 5 records, like the desert island question. So we scheduled that like a month out and we were like, what are we gonna ask? Like,
what are we gonna do now? Like,
I don't think we can ask JR desert island questions. Can we?
It's still, interviewing is, I'm sure you guys have learned. You're like, you know, you have a plan, and then you're also being in the moment to, you know, really have a conversation. Essentially, it's drawing out an interesting conversation. I've done a million bad interviews and a million good ones, and you guys are doing really good. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, the first JR interview, like looking back to it now, we were like, why? Like, still like, why? And then we had him back on a few months ago, and that was to redeem ourselves.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was wild to go back and see like the first one after doing the second one. It was like that was definitely an improvement.
Yeah. So
that's
like comparing them, seeing the improvement.
Yeah, nobody's great when they first start at anything. So
yeah, like seeing the improvement, even if it's only a little bit of improvement, is still nice.
Yeah,
that's great. That's awesome. So, and you guys are in New Jersey, or
we're in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you guys have you ever been to shows at the Auto Bar?
Yeah. I wasn't there, but my dad saw the Bouncing Souls at the Auto Bar. Like,
yeah, I guess I don't know if that's all ages or not.
Yeah, I've seen a few shows at the Auto Bar.
I've never personally gone, but like I know of the location.
Oh, I saw the Bouncing Souls at the Baltimore Soundstage though. I love the Soundstage.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, but I saw like I've been to New Jersey and I've been to like the Stone Pony.
Nice.
There was
it's not far. And then Philly's not too far either.
Yeah, I went to I think it was the only punk rock bowling in New Jersey.
Oh yeah. I know. I wasn't there, but I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the year after we were like, let's go back to New Jersey, and they went back to Vegas, and they stopped doing them in New Jersey.
Yeah. Might be best that way.
Yeah.
It was ambitious. I remember talking to Sean and Mark about it, and it was funny. The guys, the Stearns who do that festival, and I think Mark was more excited, and Sean was a little more like, I don't know, you know. So it was kind of funny.
Yeah. But back in 2012, you and Shanti started Playdate. So what made you guys want to start Playdate?
Well, we sort of accidentally created a children's book together. I don't know, accidentally something is really the right way to say it, but again, it was a similar thing. Shanti had written a story. She had just started writing and didn't intentionally write a children's story, but as she started writing and sort of like a journal entry thing, she realized like, oh, this is sort of could be a kid's story. So she intentionally like finished it as a children's story. And then the same kind of thing, like what I was talking about earlier, I was probably complaining about like, you know, I'm on tour, so I can't really do anything, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, why don't you try illustrating the story that I wrote? And I was like, all right. So I took my time, had like stuff on the road, And it took me a few years, and I finished like 36 pages or something for this book. And I was like, okay, we're done. And this was, I don't know, probably 2006, 2005. Like it took me 4 or 5 years to do it. So I probably started in like 2003 or four or something. And then just like everything else, we're like, let's put it out like a record because that's all we know how to do. So we published the books, and then we went on MySpace. This is dating it. And we're like, it's great from the Bouncing Souls. Put out this kids book. If you want us to come read, do a book reading, we did. And so we set up a little tour on the East Coast and the West Coast. And it was great. We went to some schools, we did some coffee shops, and we brought a guitar. So Shanti had just a couple songs. She had a song called Imagination, which ended up being on our first Playdate record. So we would read the book and then sing Imagination. And the teachers and some of the other people that were there were like, we love the book, but do you guys have a record? Because that song was great, or this song was great. So then we were like, maybe we could write songs for kids and families. Like that was how it all, the next thing came to be. And fast forward a year or two, Mike Park from Asian Man Records had heard about our kids book, and I know him, we're friends, and he reached out to us, and he was like, I do kids music. I'm starting on my own kids music label. And I know you guys are doing kids songs. If you guys make a record, I will release it. So that helped us sort of give us that catalyst to be like, all right, Mike's going to put out the record. Let's record a record. Let's finish it. We have a sort of a push. And that's what we did. And then literally we're like, had no plan to sort of do that. But once we put the record out, again, it was the same thing. It's like, well, all right, let's do a tour of, reach out to people we know, that like teachers, and do little gigs at places that you can have kids and families at. And that's what we started doing. And it was another whole new experience creatively. I think the biggest thing I always say about it is at that point, I had been like a touring musician for like 25 years or something. When I got in front of the kids, I realized I was like, my confidence level was like all of a sudden in the tubes. I was like, what's happening to me? Because it was like a different environment. The kids are very much unfiltered. Like if they don't like it, they're not going to pretend to be nice. They're just going to be like, they're done. They're like, oh, I'm out of here. This is lame or whatever. And that got in my head, and I was like, man, I think I'm somebody, but this is a whole new like experience in confidence and so on and so forth. So that was great. And same with the songwriting. The songwriting part was sort of freeing. It wasn't in this constricted like Bouncing Souls sort of structured. Usually Bouncing Souls songs end up being in a certain style. So that was fun. We could just write a simple song about like an owl or something, and it's cute and it's fun and it's easy and it's that.
Yeah, I mean, you make that point. Little kids are some of the most judgy people ever. Like they do not care. Like if they don't like you, they'll be like, "Why are you here? What are you doing?"
No, they don't. They're not being polite. They're not going to be polite. They're not going to be like, well, if I walk out of here right now, they'll be kind of rude, like they're not, they're just going to walk out,
Not even little kids, but my peers are some of the meanest people I've ever met.
Yeah, I'll be honest. There's definitely but see, with the younger kids, it's funny. Like it's not even serious. Like with our age group, it can get like a little serious. But when you're just in that room surrounded by all these little kids, like my aunt runs a daycare service, and sometimes over the summer I'll help her, and sometimes I'm just surrounded. I'm like, I can't do this. I'm like, I need to go outside for a minute because they are just like so full of life, and they can just like hit you with like a one-line insult like so easily, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, we're doing that now.
Yeah, they're tapped into some serious truth, at moments, and you just you got to be able to manage that, right? And so that was challenging, but also again rewarding, because we kind of figured out how to do it, and have fun with it, because it was also a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was funny enough that you mentioned the book that you had written with your wife,
Uh-huh.
because I was gonna say, was it something that you had always wanted to do, or did it just kind of happen like that did?
Well, I feel like now that I've done a few of these other things, like, people will talk about being creators, artists, musicians and stuff. It's like, people call themselves an artist, or they're like, I'm a musician, blah blah blah, or whatever they call themselves. It's like that's restricting you. And I can't remember somebody who said that. Essentially, it's all the same thing. You're expressing some part of you. You have something inside of you, an energy, a very primal sort of thing that you need to share and exchange with the world around you, and something to say. Essentially, I think that's when people ask me about punk and punk music, or what's punk, what's not punk, or being like a good musician. Like, I don't know, I can't sing, the sound of my voice is terrible. I'm like, none of that matters. Do you have something to say? And it doesn't need to be anything, other more complicated than, what does the owl say? The owl says hoo, like, that's it. It doesn't need to be more than that. And if that's what you want to say, and you want to say that in a certain way, then so be it. So I don't know. I feel like, again, I think I might be getting away from the point that, or the question you asked, but um, I think it's just important to, right. I get. I remember what your question was. It's all a continuation of that. So yes, I didn't have a big dream to. I don't think I had a big dream to do books or anything like that. I didn't have a big dream to become like a famous artist. I did have big dreams, as a teenager, when we all started making music, to make music and make a living together with my friends. Like, that was very specific. Once we started doing it, like playing in the jam room and stuff, and I was like experiencing something I didn't get and perceive and experience at any other part of my life. I was like, and then I would go to shows and be like, I would look at a band and be like, okay, they started in the same place, like they were in somebody's bedroom, or in somebody's garage, or in somebody's basement, and now they're up there, like all of that, like, started processing. It sounds elemental, but at age, when I was younger and we didn't have access to as much, like, the punk club was this very like mysterious unknown world that we're like, wow, like, how did these people get there? Like, how does that happen? How do you get from A to B? So yes, that's where it started. But my dream was almost kind of like, sorry, I'm still rambling, guys. I hope this is okay.
No, you're fine.
My dream was kind of like, my dream came true, you know, in a very short time. Like, you know, we didn't have like huge goals, like crazy goals. Like, I need to play, like, in front of, in arenas in every country in the world. Like, it wasn't those kind of size goals, which is, if you have those goals, more power to you. But we didn't have those huge goals. We just wanted to like do it and make a living and see the world, essentially. So that's also a strange place to arrive at when your dreams have come true. It's almost harder to when you arrive there. It challenges you in this whole other way. When you're like, okay, I think this is done. I think we did this.
Yeah, you're kind of like, well, what now? Because you've
Yeah.
reached that like big realm of
Yeah, and like driven for like my
yeah.
mostly like from my age like 17 to like for 10 years, like driven maniac punks in a band in the punk house, all that business, like driving, no money, next to no money, all that stuff, like driven. And then suddenly you're like, I think, wait a second, I think we did this. Yeah.
Well, Greg, this was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I wish you the best. I'm proud of you guys for grabbing this quarantine pandemic thing by the reins and creating something cool out of it. And I wish you guys the best as well.
Thank you.
so much.
All right, bye-bye. See you guys.